Welcome to the vlog. This is a new series that we're starting called Partner Perspectives, where Matt, my partner, comes on and we talk about different topics pertaining to birth. We're bringing in an expert, the partner, to tell you his perspective on today, communication in general, but also just around birth. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Erin's husband, been married for 5 years. We have now a 2-year-old Cooper, and I have learned a lot about birth over the past, I don't know,
Do you know
8, 9, 10 years. Let's kick it off.
what would you say are your maybe two or three biggest takeaways as it relates to communication that helped you prepare for birth and maybe like the early postpartum days?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I think it sounds cliche, and leading up to it, I wasn't a firm believer of doing like a class to learn about birth. I originally thought, well, you're a doula, so you're just going to know what to do and I'll follow suit.
Mhm.
But we ended up doing the childbirth education class actually with another couple, and it was actually a lot of fun just having that time set aside to go through, not only learn about what can and most likely is going to be the process in birth, but also have an open discussion about how you'd want to handle it. And if we're not on the same page, it's better to figure that out before you're actually in the delivery room
Yeah.
than talk about it in the delivery room.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty big movie buff, and I've seen a lot of deliveries on movies. And I didn't want to be the dad that is nervous, huddled in the corner, or just pacing around, not knowing what to do.
Hmm.
And so, just for my own, just personal preparedness, just going into it with at least some sort of knowledge of what my role was going to be
Yeah.
was very important to me.
Yeah.
So I feel like I got all of that just by having the time set aside to communicate and have an open discussion about. And a lot of the times, the stuff we were learning, the conversations morphed into completely off topic, but it had to do and it was very relevant with what was going to happen in the delivery room. So,
Yeah.
and honestly, we talked a lot about how to prepare for bringing home a 3-day old. That all came from talking about how we wanted to handle it before we even went to the delivery room.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And I feel like that's a huge benefit of a childbirth education, like enrolling in a class rather than doing like self study, is that it's that dedicated time you set aside to have those intentional conversations, which you otherwise might not. What do you feel like, as far as things we communicated prior to being in labor, that really helped you kind of know what to do and what to anticipate during labor?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that always stuck in my head was for sure you wanted to have a delivery room that had a tub. You wanted to, if you could, you wanted to labor in the tub in water. Um, so I knew that if we were going to be faced with a predicament of where we were going to be offered up a room that didn't have a tub, that wasn't going to fly. And we had talked about how we were going to handle that.
Spoiler alert, I didn't get in the tub.
Didn't get in the tub, but it was there. We talked about brains, just
Pop
talk.
quiz, brains.
Um,
Hold on. First, let's make this a teaching moment. Brains is actually funny you bring that up
it's an
because
acronym.
it's an acronym, but it's also a really great communication tool. Brains, go.
Got it. Benefits, risks, alternatives, intuition, nothing, space,
Whoop,
as it
whoop.
relates to the decision making process
Hmm.
during getting questions asked to you by a medical professional.
Yeah, or just anything in general, really. It's like weighing the pros and
This was
cons. But
over
yeah,
2 years ago, by the way.
yeah,
My perspective going into birth was, or coming from outside the birthing world, is what a medical professional, what a doctor tells you is law, and you just do it and you don't ask questions. I learned that you can make it an experience, like it is, you can make it what you want it to be to a certain extent, and you have, at least I learned, you have a ton more decisions than what I thought you had.
hmm
So
Yeah, brains is a huge one for
Yeah.
communicating.
Yeah.
So now that we're 2 years postpartum, we have, like everybody, still need to work on our communication here and there. And you can't use necessarily brains all day, every day for every conversation, but something new that we have implemented from recommendations of our childbirth education buddies actually are weekly touch points. And so if you're on my newsletter, you will see some information about that coming into your inbox. Just kind of tell them about our weekly touch points that aren't always weekly, but the goal is weekly.
Yeah. So we've got ours on Sundays. Basically, after we put Cooper to bed, we're both on the couch anyway, either watching TV or looking at our phones. And so we take 15 to 20 minutes. We just have a list of things that we have both decided we want to at least talk about and gauge where the other person is at. It's formal in the fact that it's on the calendar on a certain day, but it's very informal.
Yeah.
It like we used to call it a meeting, but it's definitely more of a touch point.
Yeah. And we talk about the same topics every week too. So it's like we got a running calendar. We know what's
Yeah.
coming up that's on his schedule that might not be on my radar and vice versa. And yeah, it just gives us kind of like the childbirth education, like a dedicated time to, I mean, sit and just get on the same page about things.
It goes a
Wrap
lot
it up.
better with an alcoholic beverage too, if you're into that.
It does. Um, and sometimes a game of Scrabble afterwards if you are also into that.
We sound old.
I know. What is like one key thing that you would say as far as like a piece of advice for
I got it.
communicating in this realm of parenthood?
Yeah. I'd say the specifically childbirth education class and even these weekly touch points is exactly for the people that aren't great at communicating, because you don't have to communicate until the meeting if you're just not a communicator, because it forces you to think about this stuff and inherently questions are going to come up in your mind.
Yeah.
And it is a space to where you can ask those questions and you'll be amazed and surprised probably at the answers that your partner gives, and it'll lead to a really good solid discussion that I promise you will help out when you're in the throes of standing there watching your wife deliver a baby.
Yeah. And even in the depths of parenting.
Correct.
Yeah.
That would be my advice. Force yourself to communicate, even if you're not a communicator, because I promise you it's going to help out immensely. And get a doula.
Yeah. And those are both just tools to
Yes.
communication tools. Okay, well, that's a great plug to wrap it up. Enroll in a childbirth education class, more specifically, the Empowered Pregnancy membership, and get yourself a doula, more specifically, me. Any last words?
That's the most on the spot I've been put all night. No.
See you next month.
See you next month.